Whoa. Joey Cleveland. What a song. How about that one, folks? So, got to give a shout out to my good friend Joey Cleveland. I've known Joey since we were 14 years old. We went to high school together over at LaSalle. And Joey, as you can hear from that song, is an awesome musician. He can play the guitar and sing in particular. But he's one of those people that he can really play any instrument. Like, he can sit down on the drums and he can play a little piano if he had to. Like, he just has the ear. He has the voice for music, and he just does an awesome job. Funny, Joey and I met and we became really good friends because of music and sports. We met at the soccer camp pre-freshman year when we were entering LaSalle High School. And it was like a lunch break, and we were sitting there eating lunch, and there was a bunch of music playing as we were sitting in the classroom eating, and Lifehouse came on. Falling even more in love with you. And Joey and I were singing it and laughing, and we became good buddies after that. So, Joey Cleveland, follow him on Twitter at JoeyClevLnd, and let him know how great that theme song was for That's What G Said. You can, if you just type in That's What G Said on YouTube, you can listen to that theme. You can listen to the theme song there. Joey will be, hopefully he'll be our official music guy with tunes and jingles, and anytime we need some help, Joey will be maybe giving us some little different segments, titles, and things like that. He just does a great job. And ideally, hopefully, the plan will be to do some live shows down the road where we can do them either at restaurants or different places, or maybe different events, do a live podcast. Joey can play some music in and out, and he can kind of be like the right-hand man, my wingman there, kind of like the Kevin Eubanks. He can come in with a little da-dunch, and Joey can be some comic relief at times. So hopefully we'll see if that can happen. But a big thank you again to Joey for that new theme song. Let's talk about On This Day. On this day, I'll see clearly. That's got to be the best theme song ever, wrestling theme song, right? Edge. A little segment called On This Day. I'm recording this on April the 19th, 2019, and we'll go through some major events that happened on April 19th throughout history. How about 1775? The shot heard around the world. The American Revolution begins. And you'll notice it'll tie in with some of the other history points, as that was actually the day in 1897 the first ever Boston Marathon was run. And that's the world's oldest annual marathon. Let's see, where else are we going to go to? 1934, Shirley Temple appears for the first time, or Shirley Temple appears in her first movie. 1948, the ABC TV network debuts. About 1960, baseball uniforms begin displaying players' names on the back of their jerseys. 1966, the first regular season game at Anaheim Stadium. 1971, Charles Manson sentenced to life in prison. 1982, Sally Ride, the first woman in space. 1987, the Clippers finished their season 12-70. 1995, the Oklahoma City bombing. 2005, the 265th Pope was elected, Pope Benedict. Lots of important events throughout history on this day, April 19th, 2019. OnThisDay.com is a cool website. If you go to, you can always see some of the major events that happen on particular days throughout history. Okay, folks, we are the That's What G Said podcast. That's What G Said. We're available now really everywhere. So if you go to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, Acast, I mean, you name it, we're up on everything. So any place that you listen to your podcast, if you go and you type in That's What G Said, we'll pop right up. If you subscribe, every time we have an episode, it'll immediately get sent to you. So make sure to subscribe right off the bat, and you'll never have to worry or wait. Anytime we do an episode, it'll be sent right to you. The goal will be at least at least 2 a week, possibly 3. We'll probably do one at the beginning of the week, one right before the weekend, or maybe on the weekend. And honestly, it'll all depend on the news. What's happening, anything fun that I've watched recently, anything big in the world of sports, and just checking in with movies and TV shows. So we'll kind of mimic pop culture and whatever seems to be a big deal. That's what we'll start talking about. Like always, folks, I want to hear from you. If there's a good show, a good movie, something that you saw happen, a play in a baseball game, if a player on a team that you root for, it has been on fire, kind of under the radar, or maybe the opposite, someone's just struggling so bad. Anything that's interesting, send it to me. I'll always take another look into it, and maybe it'll be something we talk about here on the show. I want to give a shout out to a sponsor here and introduce you to a sponsor for the That's What G Said podcast, call2post.com. Call2post.com is a horse racing entertainment company whose primary goal is to provide people from all walks of life the opportunity to experience the thrill of racehorse ownership. Right now, they're offering the chance to buy shares of a racehorse and get involved for $100. Call2post.com has partnered with trainer Jeff Metz on a very consistent 6-year-old gelding named Parade Blue. Metz has recently branched out onto the Kentucky circuit. Jeff has over 690 career wins, stakes-winning trainer with 4 Emerald Downs training titles, and the horse Parade Blue, the gelding, just ran third at Keeneland on April 10th at the $25,000 claiming level. If you've always wanted to own a racehorse but couldn't afford to do so, this is the perfect opportunity for you. Once you purchase your share, you become a member of the Call to Post community, and you will have direct access to interact with other community members, internal handicappers, and free tournaments where you compete for prizes. Check out call2post.com, the number 2, and you can be just seconds away from horse racing ownership. Now, I was contacted by Craig Lawrence, who is one of the creators of call2post.com, and I just wanted to share some of the conversation that I had with Craig and as to why I wanted to work with Call to Post and have them sponsor. He said, Gino, my brother and I started call2post.com as a cool hangout for horse players. We're getting into selling partnership, but we want to do the Slack channel for our members. What happened initially was we created a platform where horse players could have a discussion and conversations with other players. In our members-only Slack channel, we host handicapping tournaments, and we also have a fantasy horse racing league up and running. After establishing the members hangout, we had several members asking us if we could get into offering horse racing partnerships to our members. They didn't have a whole lot of money to invest. They didn't know a whole lot of people in the industry, and it's difficult. Let's be honest. Sometimes, in horse racing, if you don't know the right person, you could get in a bad situation, and maybe you're paying too much, or it's just not positive. So it didn't seem like they had a lot of positive interactions early on. Now they said they've hooked up with Jeff Metz. We have met more people now that we're starting to work well with, and we have a very good relationship with Jeff Metz. They're looking forward to teaming up with all of you in the future. So go to call2post.com and check out the opportunity to get involved in horse racing ownership. Moving on, Tiger Woods time. You're not going to hear me talk a whole lot about golf, but I'm not an expert in golf in any way, shape, or form. But what I do know is when Tiger's on the hunt, when Tiger's on the prowl, when Tiger Woods is in contention, I'm paying attention, and I know that. My dad and I were watching the final round of the Masters on Sunday when Tiger was finishing, and that was the first time that I've actually been watching golf in a while, unless it was some silly thing where I had a few bucks on someone. But when we talk about the biggest stars in the world, I don't think there are many people who could have kind of stopped the world last week on Sunday like Tiger Woods did. And everybody was talking about Tiger Woods, his comeback, his return. And let's just kind of go through a little bit of what happened, right? So Tiger Woods wins the 2019 Masters. It was his 5th time winning the Masters. Tiger won the Masters in 1997. He was 21 years old. This is his first major win since 2008. But between 2008 and 2019, he's had 11 other top 10 finishes. In 2014, he only finished one major. He finished in the 69th spot. In 2015, he he tied for 17th in one, and then he got cut, and he didn't even make the cut in the other three. In 2016 and 2017, he didn't play in any majors. In 2018, he tied for 32, he got cut in one, he tied for 6th, and then he was second. And so you could see the progression at the end of 2018 where he had a top 10 finish and then another top 10 finish when he was second in the PGA Championship, and he finished 2 shots back. This is a guy who, whether you like him or not with what happened in his personal life, with his infidelity, and he's had some drug problems, but he has really, his body has been beat up quite a bit. 1999 and 2007, he had LASIK eye surgeries, 2 LASIK eye surgeries. In April 2008, he had a knee surgery. He wins the 2008 U.S. Open basically on one leg when he returns, and then immediately after has to announce he's leaving for another knee surgery. He comes back in 2009. At the end of the year, he has the incident with his wife, so he takes some time off. 2012, he hurts his leg. 2013, an elbow injury. 2014, back pain. 2015, hip issues and wrist issues. And then in 2017, many of his close friends and many of the people who were closest to him, he basically said, I'm done. A lot of people thought he was done, and he was never really going to be the same. But then, and really in all of 2018, most of 2018, he played pretty well, finishing second in the PGA Championship at the end. He was number 26 in the world rankings. In September 2018, he won the Tour Championship to end the season. And then he started off 2019 with the Masters victory, his first since, 2008, his 15th ever major. He's only 3 behind Jack Nicklaus now. And at 43, he was the second oldest ever to win a major, only behind Jack, who won his major at 46. Tiger now has 81 total victories, and the only person to ever win 4 majors in a row. He didn't do it all in the same year, but at one point he was the reigning winner of all 4 of the majors. And the stat that I think is really incredible, when tied for the lead or leading going into the final day, Tiger is 14-1. Unbelievable. Controversial, yes, but we love a comeback story, don't we? And we can't sugarcoat it. Tiger didn't have cancer. He didn't suffer really a huge tragic loss. He lost his dad, and obviously, but it wasn't like something personally to him that kind of made him go off the rails. He cheated on his wife. He made a mistake, right? And I think a lot of the times we all, as viewers and fans, we like to see that the stars out there, they make mistakes too. They're regular people. They F up, right? And we love the redemption story. So Tiger was able to apologize. He was able to battle through a lot of the injuries, and now he's back on top, and nobody, I mean, so many people had counted him out and written him off. And now you never know, right? Now it's the start of the year. He just won a major, and he's playing good golf. He looks like he's healthy. He looks like he's happy. Who knows how long his body can hold up, as you heard the list of injuries and surgeries that he's had. But I tell you one thing, I'm paying attention a lot more to golf when Tiger Woods is playing. That's for sure. So hopefully Tiger can continue on, and I'll keep an eye on him, because it was fun over the weekend. It was really fun just seeing and hearing everyone. When we talk about like major stars or on this level, who are we talking about over the last 50 years, right? Maybe a LeBron or a Kobe, but I don't even know if Kobe got that big. What, Muhammad Ali was a huge. Serena Williams, maybe. I don't know, because Tiger transcends golf. Serena will transcend tennis, and for me, I'm kind of thinking more of athletes that aren't quite in the most popular sports. It's some of the ones who are so dominant and so great that make us really just stop and go, wow. So Tiger Woods back in the winner's circle, winning the 2019 Masters. Let's make the transition on over from Tiger to the NBA playoffs. Over in the Eastern Conference, the 1 seed Milwaukee is really been handling Detroit easily. Blake Griffin has not played a minute yet for Detroit, yet he has 2 technical fouls from the bench. I think a sweep is likely there with Detroit up, or with Milwaukee up 2-0 over Detroit. They have wins by 35 and 21 as the series shifts back to Detroit for Game 3. But I'd be surprised if Detroit was able to pull out any more than 1 game in this series. The number 2 seeded Raptors, they're tied 1-1 with Orlando, and Toronto has had the issue in past years of losing Game 1 and really kind of choking in the playoffs. This is a series that they are 100% the better team and the favorite team, and they should be winning, but Orlando is a feisty team. Orlando won Game 1 basically on the back of DJ Augustine, who had 25 points and 6 assists. Game 2 was never close. Toronto bounced back, and they crushed the Magic 111-82. We still haven't had a good game from Vucevic for Orlando, who was their best player and an all-star this year. So this is a series. You would expect Vucevic to show up with, a 25, 30-point effort in either Game 3 or Game 4. And if he's able to get a victory and they're able to get out 2-2, and you start making the Raptors and the Raptors fans a little nervous, they start wondering about Kawhi maybe. Is Kawhi going to be leaving at the end of the year? Lowry starts struggling again. He's not been a great playoff performer throughout his career. So that's a series, that 2-7 in the East, tied 1-1. The 3-6 is Philly. They're up 2-1 over the Brooklyn Nets. This is a must-win Game 4 for Brooklyn. Joel Embiid did not play Game 3. They showed a pretty small lineup for some parts of the game, and it was a really, really good lineup for Philly. Brooklyn stole Game 1, but since that, Tobias Harris, JJ Redick, and especially Ben Simmons have really bounced back and played well. Remember, all of them did not play well in Game 1 for Philly. It was really only Jimmy Butler who was carrying them in Game 1, and Butler's been really solid. I think he's kind of changing the narrative a little bit, watching how solid and steady he's been in these playoffs, because whether or not you like Jimmy Butler, I think he is a gamer. He's one of those big game players who elevates, who raises. He's not afraid to take a big shot. He thinks he deserves to be taking the big shot, and he wants the moment. So I like players like that, and he's a very good two-way player also. Actually wouldn't be too against the Lakers giving Jimmy Butler. The real key, though, for Brooklyn is D'Angelo Russell, right? I know D'Angelo very well as a Laker fan, and D'Angelo is very skilled, but some of the negatives on D'Angelo and the knocks are what we recently saw from him. 26 points on 12 of 26 shooting and 0 free throws. D'Angelo does not get to the bucket a lot. He's not a very efficient scorer, and if his three-point shot is not on, he is a high-volume player who needs to take a lot of shots and who really needs to have the ball in his hand a lot to score. And as you play tougher and tougher teams and they're able to focus in and key in and lock down on that, I think it's going to be tough for D'Angelo to score efficiently at all moving forward in the playoffs. The 4-5 series in the East, Boston's up 2-0 over Indy. Boston's not even playing well, and they're beating an Indy team that is just a little bit outmanned. Let's be honest, this Indy team without Oladipo, they're probably the 7th or 8th best roster in the East. I think Orlando's probably better than them. And I think every team except for Detroit without Blake is better than them on paper. They're well coached. They play pretty smart basketball, Indiana. But the problem is they just can't score. And they have too many long periods of time throughout the game where they just get really tight. In Game 1, Indy scored 8 points in the third quarter. In Game 2, Indy scored 12 points in the fourth quarter. Boston went on a 10-0 run over the final 5 minutes of the game. You just can't have lapses like that throughout the game. It's a must-win Game 3 for Indy as they move back home, but I think Boston's in really good shape. It was key for them to get out 2-0, not kind of blow a game, because that's what we've seen from Boston all throughout the year. They've really underachieved most of the time. So that was, I think, important for Boston to get up 2-0. Let's move over to the West. In the 1-seeded Golden State Warriors, they're up 2-1 over the Clippers. They blew the Clippers out in Game 3, and it was a major bounce back for Kevin Durant and the Warriors after that Game 2 debacle. Remember, in Game 2, Golden State blew a 31-point lead. Durant only took 8 shots, and he had 9 turnovers, and the Clippers came back to win a game that they were down by 31 points in the third quarter. Game 3, not the case at all, when Golden State wins 132-105. It's a must-win Game 4 for the Clippers, but I think they may have awoken. Is it awoken? Awaken? I think the Clippers might have woken up the sleeping giant. Because if you're the Warriors, it's hard to just stay focused in every single game when you've been to the promised land so many times. Like 1 or 2 of these games where you don't feel the pressure, where you don't feel it, you're just not going to be as up. And now maybe they're going to be focused every game. And I don't know if they're going to blow too many big leads like they did against the Clippers. This team looks really tough even without DeMarcus Cousins moving forward. Never been high on Denver this year. I think they were a team that was really a regular season built type team. They're the number 2 seed, and they are down 1-2 to the San Antonio Spurs, the 7th seeded Spurs. The thing about Denver is they're a deep team, and they have a lot of interchangeable pieces, which is very good for the regular season. The problem is when things get tight and locked down, who do you really trust on Denver to go get a bucket? Jokic is solid. But after Jokic, what do you get from Murray, Barton, Harris, even Millsap on any given night? I don't think they're consistent enough. This is a must-win Game 4 for Denver because they are at San Antonio. They cannot go down 3-1. Spurs have DeRozan and Aldridge. You know what you're going to get from those two, right? You know what you're going to get. Mid-range, slashing, like middle 20 points from both of them. Solid, kind of underrated NBA stars. And that, when you know what you're going to get from a couple players on a team and the other team is inconsistent, that looks like it's enough right now. I mean, legitimately, would it surprise you if the Spurs beat Denver and then they go on and beat the 3-seeded Blazers? As we transition on to the 3-6 matchup, the Blazers now are the 3 seed. They're up 2-0 over the Thunder. They're up 2-0 even without Nurkic, although we know that Paul George is not 100% healthy and he's not playing at the MVP level that he was playing at earlier on in the season. Paul George shot 8 for 24 in Game 1 and 4 for 15 from the 3-point line. And he only shot 2 from 7 from the 3-point line in Game 2. He was much better, though, 11 from 20 overall. But the team was just 5 for 28 from 3. And if Paul George isn't making threes, who is for the Thunder? That's the problem for a team who's solid defensively, but they don't have I just don't know if they have enough scoring. They don't have enough offense when Paul George isn't playing at a high level, and we've seen Russ not really be very efficient this year. Game 1, Lillard had 30 points, and Cantor had 24, and McCollum had 24. And then in Game 2, Lillard had 29, and McCollum had 33. So you're getting 60 so far from Lillard in 2 games, and just under 60 from McCollum in 2 games. Back to OKC for a must-win Game 3 for the Thunder. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Spurs won, to see the Spurs beat whoever came out of that Blazers Thunder series, because those two teams are banged up and the Spurs are just well coached and solid. And you give me Popovich with the opportunity to strategize and game plan against you, I'll take Popovich. I think probably one of the more boring series so far has been Houston up 2-0 over Utah. A must-win Game 3 for Utah on Saturday back home. Harden has been good. He had 32, 13, and 10 in Game 2, and Gordon, Tucker, Capella, and Paul all shot well and all shot very efficiently. So if Harden is able to control the game like that, even if he's not scoring 45, and even if he's not scoring in an efficient manner, when Gordon and Tucker and Capella and Paul all hit their shots, they're going to be a tough team. Now, are those pieces going to be able to hit shots against the Warriors and deep into the playoffs? Maybe. They didn't last year. But I think right now it still looks like the Houston team has the best opportunity, I think, to beat the Golden State Warriors. Okay, let's do a little more around the world as we move on from the NBA playoffs over to the WWE. So let's get some quick post-WrestleMania thoughts. Didn't talk a lot about WrestleMania. I haven't really done anything since then. All the endings were the endings that the fans wanted, right? Kofi Mania, Becky Lynch winning the women's title. It kind of was a weird ending though, right? A little bit unsatisfying, but the result that everyone wanted. Seth Rollins winning the title, result that everyone wanted. It's too long. I love WWE. I love wrestling. I wouldn't mind sitting and watching wrestling all day long, but I'm one of the few people who's a maniac and who doesn't get tired and who gets pumped up 7 hours into it. 7.5 hours is too long for the fans. It's too long for the wrestlers. It's too long for the people putting on the show. Make it 2 nights. WWE's already kind of made WrestleMania into a week. WrestleMania week, right? They have the NXT show. They have the Hall of Fame ceremonies. They have all sorts of other access events throughout the week. Just extend it now. Saturday and Sunday night. Make your week start a little bit earlier. Do the Hall of Fame on Thursday, NXT on Friday, night 1 of WrestleMania Saturday, night 2 of WrestleMania Sunday. Then nobody gets shortchanged. You don't have to worry about trying to fit everybody in to one night and all these matches where you're putting in 8, 10, multiple teams. Let it sit a little bit. You can do 2 nights where you're going 4.5 hours each. 5 hours each if you want. That's just so much better than the 7.5 hours. The fans, it's a shame for some of the matches because there'll be a really hot match where the fans go crazy, and then immediately following whatever match is next, they're kind of like a downer, and the fans don't get into that match because you just can't be up for 7.5 hours straight, period, especially in a year when they're going to have a good kickoff show like they did. They had 2 battle royals on the kickoff show. They had a couple other matches. It was 4 matches throughout. It wasn't just a fluff kickoff show where they're just previewing the matches. It was actually action. We saw John Cena, Thugonomics, John Cena make his return, come out and interrupt Elias. That was a fun moment. The Undertaker did not show up at WrestleMania, but he did return on the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania. Kurt Angle's gone. He had his retirement match. You know, I wasn't really a fan of how Kurt Angle got treated in his last run with the WWE, the last year or so. His match with Ronda against Triple H and Stephanie at WrestleMania was good, and that was about it. He wasn't quite in shape the way he used to be. He's had how many injuries, neck surgeries, all sorts of things, but he wasn't really treated and handled like the star Kurt Angle that he used to be. It seemed like they were kind of ribbing him a lot of the time. And I know in wrestling, when you're on your way out, you put the next guy over, or the next gal over, or the next up-and-coming star, you put him over, which means you lose on your way out so they can win and they can kind of get a little rub from beating you. But I would have liked to see at least Kurt be put in maybe a few more spots where he could shine, or just treated with a little bit more respect. It seemed like he was losing a lot of matches that were meaningless. I don't mind him losing. I just want him to lose to a star, or his losses to kind of mean something for the person who beat him going forward. What do we see? Braun Strowman, he interacted with the SNL guys. It was a fine job by Michael Che and Colin Jost, who's dating Scarlett Johansson. Colin Jost. How about that? Huh? Scarlett Jo in some of the Avengers fame. But Scarlett Jo, she used to be on my list. She was number 1 for a while, for me. She was number 1. Then Mila Kunis took the mantle from her, and then Emmy Rossum took the mantle for her. I'm a big Shameless fan. Emmy, just gorgeous, major crush on Fiona. And then NXT, the NXT takeover shows. Those are always awesome. They're completely different shows than from the WWE main event pay-per-view shows, right? Because they're short, not a lot of matches, but long, incredible matches. Like every show you watch, you go, was that one of the best matches I've ever seen? Gargano winning the NXT title versus Adam Cole. Baby! What a match. Velveteen Dream and Matt Riddle. Bro. And the women's match was Shayna Baszler, Kyrie, Bianca, Yoshirai. The future is bright in NXT, and they just keep churning out star after star after star after star after star. Now, hopefully, when they come up on the main roster, they will be treated with the same respect they're treated with down in NXT. That's not always the case. We see some of these guys and gals who do such a great job at NXT. They're big stars. They get over. They get popular with the crowd. And then their character gets completely changed and tweaked, and they never really get a fair run or a fair opportunity on the main roster. This past week was the Superstar Shakeup on WWE. It's supposed to be like a draft. And some years they've done a good job with behind the scenes, the general managers talking to each other with trades and 2-for-1s or personal issues. And the last couple of years, they really have been kind of lackluster with how they've presented the Superstar Shakeup. Not really like you would see other sports doing a draft or draft prep or trade deadline or anything like that. And it seems pretty easy, right? It's something you could just have a couple of these backstage segments, some of your wrestlers not knowing where they're going to go, people being split up from teams or family members. Just didn't love the way it was handled. Quick run through of some of the news and notes around the week. I thought the Kevin Owens with Kofi and Xavier was pretty funny. KO in the New Day on SmackDown. Had the opportunity to be horrible, but Kevin Owens does a really good job with whatever he's given. Roman Reigns punched Vince McMahon. Roman's over on SmackDown now. Becky, it looks like Becky, 2 belts in the Iconics, will be on both brands, defending their belts. Where's Sasha? Lots of rumors about Sasha Banks. She seemed to be very unhappy with the company, that she was basically lied to about results in WrestleMania if she was going to win the match with Bayley. They've now split Bayley and Sasha up. But we don't know about Sasha. Is she done? Is she on Raw? Is she going somewhere else? I don't know if they're going to release her. Have they talked her back into coming? Is she taking a time out? Who knows? Dean Ambrose. Dean looks like he is done. Kind of weird the way that they played this with Ambrose, right? I can't really remember ever them mentioning another wrestler so far in advance had asked for their release. They granted it to them, and then they were still on TV and still part of storylines. Generally, that doesn't happen. So this one's been a weird one with me. I thought all along this was part of an angle, and Dean wasn't really leaving. So we'll see. I guess I won't really believe until I see Dean wrestling in another company. Luke Harper also done. Man, talk about an underrated wrestler, huh? Luke Harper. That guy can go. He's big. He didn't ever really get a push, you know? He had the one little IC title run, and he had a good match with Ziggler. It looked like he was going to get a push a couple years back when he was involved with Randy Orton and AJ Styles and Bray Wyatt, and he just never was someone they got behind and pushed. But he has a distinct look. He's a big guy, and he can go. I've always been a fan of Luke Harper. Rhonda is on her hashtag impregnation vacation. She's been tweeting about that. She's taking some time off to try to go become a mother. Sami Zayn is a crazy heel, which is fun. He's cut some great promos the last couple weeks. And I think we should see more focus now on some of the storylines now that this Superstar Shakeup is over. It's been kind of like a standstill the last couple weeks. You could tell that WWE didn't really want to go in and start setting things up, because I don't know if they even knew for sure who was going to Raw and who was going to SmackDown. Roman Reigns is in the Hobbs and Shaw trailer with The Rock. If you look up the trailer for Hobbs and Shaw, you can see Roman Reigns and The Rock together in that trainer. Quickly, who went to Monday Night Raw? Who went to SmackDown? My guy, The Miz, is on Monday Night Raw. Ricochet, Aleister Black, The Viking Experience. Now, Ivar and Eric, they used to be War Machine and then War Raiders, but you can't say the word roar, so now they are The Viking Experience, which is a horrible name. EC3, Cedric Alexander, Andrade, and Zelina Vega, Rey Mysterio, The Usos, Naomi, Eric Young, without Sanity, Lacey Evans, AJ Styles. We didn't see Samoa Joe this week. I think he was sick, but the word is that Samoa Joe is also on Raw with that U.S. title. SmackDown, Finn Balor, the IC champ. He had a pretty solid match with Ali right off the bat. Lars Sullivan, even after appearing on Raw, it looks like he's going to settle in on SmackDown. Ember Moon, we saw Bayley show up without Sasha. Kairi Sane shows up with Asuka and Paige. So it looks like Kairi might be in a tag team with Asuka and Paige as their manager. Buddy Murphy, the best kept secret. Elias and Roman had a segment with Vince where Vince was teasing the biggest acquisition in SmackDown history. Elias came out, was playing a song, and then Roman interrupted, beat up Elias, beat up Vince. Roman Reigns now on SmackDown. Chad Gable on SmackDown without Bobby Roode. Mickey James is there. Apollo Crews, Liv Morgan, and Heavy Machinery all making the move to SmackDown. So there's your wrestling corner for the week. Little WWE corner. Okay, what's next here? Where are we going to go? Let's be honest, folks. Probably not going to get this kind of information on every show where we're going to talk famous dates in history, Tiger Woods, NBA playoffs, WWE. Now we move on to what I've been watching. What have I been watching? Okay, well, I think everybody is watching Game of Thrones right now, right? Game of Thrones, Sunday night. We got the comeback most recently. If you want more Game of Thrones deep dive, check out the Mike Abadir Show podcast weekly. When on that show, Mike and I will be doing Game of Thrones recap. So we went over some of our favorite moments and the big moments from this past weekend. We saw some dragon riding. Jon's family hates Dany, hates Daenerys. Euron getting it on with Cersei. Okay. Jon finds out he is the true heir to the throne and not his girlfriend / aunt. So she's not really the real heir as she thinks. And then how about the meetings, right? From some of the characters that reunited or we got to see them link back up again. Jaime and Bronn, Tyrion and Sansa, Jon and Arya, the Hound and Arya, Gendry and Arya. Lots of fun moments there. But Game of Thrones isn't the only thing on Sunday that we're watching, right? For me, Sunday night, I'll do some deep dives on these shows now moving forward, but just want to steer you to what I'm watching. Billions on Showtime. Veep on HBO. Barry on HBO. That's a nice little Sunday night, right? You get some Game of Thrones. You get some Billions. You need a light show in there, though, after some seriousness and some of the killing in Veep. And then Barry's kind of right in the middle, where it's a kind of a dark comedy. Awesome shows. Big fans of those shows. That Sunday night lineup right now is really, really good if you're watching HBO and if you're watching Showtime. And then don't forget about the Avengers. I just watched Infinity War on Netflix as kind of a little prep for Avengers Endgame, which will be coming out Thursday, April the 25th. Record pre-sale tickets there for Avengers Endgame. If you're a big Avengers fan, make sure to watch Infinity War or some of the other Avengers movies so you can get yourself in the mode. I'm one of the dorks that always does that, right? Like if a new show is coming out, I'm going to go back and watch the last season to get myself set back up. If a new movie's coming out and it's the third one, I'm going to go watch the first two. When WWE WrestleMania comes up, I go back and watch all of the WrestleManias. It's like a 2-month task for me. I'll start at WrestleMania 1 and it'll be like my background noise while I'm working for the next 2 months as they just go through each and every WrestleMania. So always looking for content and shows to watch. Let's see what else. Married. I found a show on Hulu called Married. A couple seasons. Pretty funny. Quick watch. A good comedy. Check it out. Continuing to watch Superstore, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You can hit both of those on Hulu if you don't watch them live when they come on. Kim's Convenience is another show I just finished on Netflix. Really, really funny. All of those are comedies, so if you're looking for a good laugh, you could check out any of those last four. Married, Superstore, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or Kim's Convenience. I'm always looking for a new show or a movie, so any suggestions at all, please send them my way. I am just a maniac when it comes to content, and I love binge watching shows. If I find a new movie, I'm going to watch it immediately. So yeah, need to hear from you folks. Remind you one more time, the show is brought to you by calltopost.com. Call the number 2, post.com, a horse racing entertainment company whose primary goal is to provide people from all walks of life the opportunity to experience the thrill of racehorse ownership. Check out calltopost.com, the number 2. You can be just seconds away from horse racing ownership. On Viceland.com, this is also in the what I've been watching segment. On Viceland, if you have the channel Viceland, if you don't, or if you've missed it, you can go to Viceland.com, and they have 3 really good documentaries up at the moment, and they're about wrestling. But if you're not a wrestling fan, if you're just a fan of like the documentary style or like a crime, like the crime style stories, these are really good ones, because the first one, and when I say good, I mean interesting. The first one is all about Bruiser Brody. And if you don't know the story about Bruiser Brody, he was a 6'6", 350, huge star in the 70s, 80s in wrestling. And he was murdered in July 1988 in Puerto Rico before a big show. He was slated to wrestle that night. And it was this big, plotted out murder. Just an unbelievable story. If you know the rest of some of the names that you see, David Manning, Mick Foley, Dutch Mantell, Abdullah the Butcher, who is Brody's greatest nemesis, they're all in the documentary. And Abdullah the Butcher and Tony Atlas, they really have major parts in that. You know, Bruiser Brody was a huge star in the late 70s, early 80s, and he was hardcore. And for him, the key was everybody thought he was a maniac. He was involved in matches with weapons, chains, blood, all sorts of hardcore matches, and he always wanted to kind of keep that image of him as a hardcore crazy guy. And so a lot of times he would just really beat up on guys in the ring, and he could get away with doing it because he was a star, because the fans, loved him. He kept getting booked and booked and booked over and over and over again. He actually played for the Washington Redskins. He was an All-American football player in high school, and he went to college on an athletic scholarship. His family really did not know him well, and you hear from the family a little bit in the documentary. Seems like his best buddy really was Abdullah the Butcher, who is shown with his head scarred up and scraped up, and he can barely even move around. They talk about Puerto Rico and how Puerto Rico was known as Blood City. The fans were really, really violent. They wanted violence. They would throw rocks and stones and urine at the wrestlers, bags of urine, glass, rocks, nails. The organization was called the World Wrestling Council. The co-founders were Gorilla Monsoon and Carlos Colon. We all know Gorilla Monsoon from his fame in the WWF as a wrestler, but a lot of people, especially in this generation, know him as an announcer, and his really fun back and forth with Bobby the Brain. Jose Gonzalez was a wrestler that was named Invader number 1, and he did not get along well with Bruiser Brody, and he was close with Carlos Colon. He was actually the booker in the territory, which means he was one of the ones who kind of set up the matches and to figure out who would win and go forward. Brody had wrestled against Invader one time, and he beat him badly, so badly that Invader had to go to Jose Gonzalez had to go to the hospital, and Gonzalez had been heard telling other people that he was going to kill Brody at some point. So Brody, and he did this a lot, like he believed in his gimmick. He believed who he was, so he just beat the crap out of people to keep up that tough guy image. And before the July 1988 incident happened, Brody was back here in America, and he was telling people that he was owed $25,000 by the company in Puerto Rico. So he was very upset. He also hated Jose. Jose hated him. Jose was the booker. Jose's 3-year-old daughter just died, so Jose's on edge. Brody goes to Puerto Rico. He's booked for a big event, and he goes to talk to Jose about their match in private, which is something that happens all the time. Before a match, the wrestlers will always go and discuss the match, kind of lay it out, what's going to happen, that, kind of put their rundown in. And they were in private, and Jose stabbed Bruiser Brody. And Bruiser Brody, there was a skirmish and a little bit of a struggle, and Brody came out of a room that he was in, and Tony Atlas could see that he was bleeding. And Tony Atlas basically took care of him. He put him under his wing. He was the only one kind of standing by for him, because you got to remember, this was set up. This wasn't just one man who pulled this off, Jose. This was set up with a couple other people who were watching his back. And what ends up happening is Tony Atlas goes to the hospital with Bruiser Brody. His feet are turning blue because he's just been stabbed all over. He's losing blood circulation. The other wrestlers at the show, the only person who saw this happen was Tony Atlas. Nobody else saw. So Tony Atlas leaves to go with Bruiser Brody, and he goes to the hospital. The other wrestlers at the show, they thought it was part of an angle. Remember, Brody is the tough, badass guy, right? He's the guy who's bleeding all the time. So everyone's thinking this is part of the storyline, right? They're setting this up, and Brody's going to come back with a return. It's going to be this huge fight. It's going to be so intense, and the fans are going to go crazy. That didn't happen. I mean, the show went on that night. So Tony Atlas comes back while Bruiser Brody is still in the hospital. The people at the wrestlers and the people backstage, they're talking about a fan stabbing him. The police thought it was a fan. They thought it was all part of the show. So Tony Atlas comes back. He's telling the police the story. He even wrestles. He goes on for a few minutes, finishes his match early. The man, Jose Gonzalez, who murdered Bruiser Brody, goes out and wrestles that night. So Tony gets word that the murderers are now going to come after him because he's protecting Bruiser Brody. And Tony leaves. He kind of just goes MIA. He goes to the beach and he's just kind of walking all night long. Bruiser Brody ends up dying in the hospital that night. They never recover any murder weapons whatsoever. And Abdullah the Butcher, when he came back to the United States, he had to tell Bruiser Brody's family that he was dead. Jose Gonzalez was arrested, got bailed out, and walked out of prison that day. They had a trial, and he got off on trial on self-defense. The reason why he gets off on trial on self-defense is because the fans in Puerto Rico, they believed that the wrestling was real. They believed that Brody was that crazy man and that Jose was just sticking up for himself. Tony Atlas, the only person who saw the whole thing, was never contacted to testify. There were some dirty, dirty things going on in this, folks. This was a really good documentary. It's gripping, and your jaw is dropped repeatedly over and over and over with just behind the scenes stories and some of the wrestlers telling you, and these are names that we know, right? Mick Foley, Dutch Mantel, Abdullah Butcher. Crazy. Go to Viceland.com and you can check it out. And there were two more up. The Montreal Screwjob one is about Bret Hart, if you don't know the story. Bret Hart was the WWE champion. It was 1997. He was getting ready to leave for WCW, and this was going to be his final match against Shawn Michaels for the championship. Well, Bret and Shawn Michaels hated each other. They were in Montreal, where Bret's from, and Bret did not want to lose the title to Shawn. He told his boss, I will lose to anyone else except for this particular guy. He disrespects me. I will not lose to him. So it would basically be like if you were directing a movie or a play and the actors in the play just didn't want to do what they were supposed to do. They didn't want to play their roles. They didn't want to go along with it. And that's what ends up happening. And it ended up being just this huge, huge incident where, it doesn't sound that big of a deal on paper, right? Oh, it was a wrestling match and they said one thing was supposed to happen and the other thing did. But what ends up happening is it sparks like a chain reaction of all the people who work underneath your boss. Trust issues, right? Trust issues. Do these wrestlers now, are they going to go back out and do what you say after you just screwed over Bret Hart? It was tough because Vince is in the right, Bret's in the right. Vince is doing what he wants to do for his company. He doesn't want to let Bret leave his company with the championship, still as the championship and as a champion, and go to another company, right? You see a lot of really known wrestlers and wrestling personalities in this one. Jim Cornette, Bruce Pritchard, Bret Hart himself, Dutch Mantell, Scott Hall, Earl Hebner, Vince Russo, and Eric Bischoff. The big, I guess, battle. There's really nothing new. If you know wrestling, you know the Montreal Screwjob, you're probably not going to get a lot of new information out of this particular one. But we did see Jim Cornette and Vince Russo both saying that it was their idea for the Montreal Screwjob. I tend to believe Jim Cornette a little bit more, because Vince Russo, a lot of times, it just seems like he wants to get his face and his name out there. And I guess initially he wasn't even contacted for the documentary, but he asked to be in it because he said he had great stories. And I don't know. I think I'd probably lean towards Jimmy Cornette as the one coming up with that. Scott Hall, though, he thinks it was all a work. That he was watching it back and he thinks it was all a setup. He was watching the reactions and he said, I think it was all a setup. I think Bret knew it was going to happen. Nobody really is that upset. I think it was all planned. And then you kind of see, I like this one a lot because Bret is my favorite wrestler of all time. And Bret's big years were from 92 to 97. And for me, that was when I was 5 to 10 years old. So that was when I am a kid and just all in on wrestling, loving it. Bret is the good guy. He is my guy. And you hear him talk and he says, you know what? He wanted to be remembered as the guy who made wrestling the guy who made the wrestling part a focal part of wrestling again. And he wasn't all pomp and circumstance. He was an in-ring wrestler who had good morals, and he was just a good guy. And that's why the kids liked him, because he was your baby face, your major good guy. So another really good one to check out on Viceland.com is that Montreal Screwjob one. And then the really sad one, because I think probably the most mainstream one was the Macho Man with Miss Elizabeth. We all know the Macho Man as just one of the biggest crossover stars in wrestling, from his voice to his look to the outfits. And talk about Bret not being big on pomp and circumstance. Macho Man was big on pomp and circumstance, but he was also an incredible wrestler, and he was also incredible at cutting a promo or what makes me tick, what makes me tick, what makes me tick. With the cream of the crop. See, I've been to the top of the mountain, and I'm going back, yeah, and I'm going back, yeah. Lust in your eyes, Hulk Hogan. Some of the more memorable lines ever from the Macho Man, and he would have a lot of fun backstage with Mean Gene cutting promos. But this is a really good behind the scenes on Macho Man and Elizabeth. The one word that everybody uses to describe the Macho Man: intense. And his wife, Miss Elizabeth, she humanized him. It was really one of the first big male-female wrestling combinations. This was 1985, 86. We're not used to seeing a female as like a valet, as a manager out there. And Macho Man, they had told Macho Man they wanted someone to accompany him to the ring. And so he brought his own wife in, Elizabeth. He had been married to her before, and he brought her with him on the road, and he made her part of his package, part of the Macho Man Randy Savage package. And he was a second generation wrestler, incredible on the microphone, and he had a crazy gimmick that was just a little extension of his personality. His brother, Lanny Poffo, said the dial was past 10 and it was permanently broken. You get great insight from Bruce Pritchard, Lanny Poffo, Scott Hall, Jake the Snake, Eric Bischoff, Jimmy Hart, all in this one. Macho Man in real life, one of his mottos was, whatever it takes. And you could see he worked so hard. He met Elizabeth as she was working at the front desk of a gym. He went into the gym. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and he pulled his glasses off. She said, "Wow, your eyes are so red." And Macho Man said, "You should see him from this side." And that, I guess that got her laughing, and that was it from there. She fell for the guy. You hear Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, and he said, "Man, if I was a chick, I would have banged Randy. He was as cool as hell." Now, that's a quote. It's a quote. It's a direct quote, so I can say a bad word if it's in a direct quote. But Scott Hall basically saying, yeah, Randy was cool. If I was the girl, I'd be with him. He was the total opposite of Liz. She was very quiet. He was very intense. But Randy was very loyal to his brother, to his wife. He got them both jobs in WWE. He always wanted to help them out. But it's when you look back at the character and the dynamic, it's really kind of scary because he was basically playing like a domestic abuse type character. He yelled at her. He told her to shut up. He kind of pulls her around very intensely, but he never really hits her. And it's just always insinuated that he's intense and she's just very quiet. But this goes over a little bit of Randy's pre-WWE. Then it goes over his coming to WWE, the story with Liz, WrestleMania 3 versus Steamboat, the Mega Powers with Hogan and Elizabeth, his Macho King run. You go into WCW for a little bit and towards the end. So you really get a good sense of the Macho Man from, 1980 to 2010. The big Saturday Night's Main Event when Elizabeth got hurt and Hulk carried her back and then the Mega Powers exploded. The one thing that kept coming up over and over again when you heard, Jake the Snake or Jimmy Hart talk, Randy was very crazy protective over Elizabeth, and she'd be traveling on the road with him. And you have to remember, this is a male dominated business. So she's in the locker room with all the men, and there's only a few women back there, a couple of the female wrestlers, and maybe another wife or girlfriend for some of the other wrestlers. And he didn't allow anyone to talk to her. I mean, he did not allow it. He went crazy. He had full control over her in every way. And by 1990, she wanted time off the road. She needed time apart. We saw the Macho Man becomes the Macho King. They paired him up with Sensational Sherry. He had that awesome retirement match with the Ultimate Warrior in 1991. And that's when Elizabeth was in the stands, WrestleMania 1991. She embraces him after he loses when Sherry's beating him up. And they have this embrace, and they're back together, and there are people crying on TV, grown men crying on TV. He then proposes on TV, and they have the match made in heaven wedding, which main evented SummerSlam 1991. Then Jake the Snake interrupts with the snake. And then we all remember that great angle with the snake, right? In November 1991 with the snake incident when Macho Man was tied up in the ropes and Jake had the snake biting him on the arm and the snake wouldn't get off. Jake was talking about how he's trying to get the snake off in real life and he won't get off Macho Man. Unfortunately, at the point of their on-TV marriage in real life, they were really, really struggling. And so when they get married on WWE, they're getting ready to almost divorce. And when they go their separate ways and when they broke up, Macho, it took a long time for him to really recover. I don't know if either one of them ever really did recover. He goes to WCW in 1995 in the late 90s, and Liz also goes over to WCW. They had some storylines on TV about their former relationship. And then in the late 90s, Liz started to date Lex Luger. Lex Luger's married at this time. Lex Luger puts Liz in a complex where his family is also living. They are taking pills, drugs. Lex Luger had hit her. He was arrested. And he talks about all of it now. He knows everything he was wrong, and he's made right with his life. But she overdosed on pills at the age of 42. It was a real shame. Lex Luger was arrested on 17 felony accounts. He's recovered now, and he'll tell the story, and he'll take all the responsibility and blame for it. And it was a bad part of his life, but he's doing good now. We got to see in 2010 Randy Savage remarrying, and then we got to see when he passed away in 2011. He was one of those crossover stars where it was mainstream news. Everybody knew Randy Savage for the voice, the look, and Liz, the first lady of wrestling. A sad story, but very, very interesting. All three of those documentaries on. So just go to Viceland.com and you can watch any of them. They're all about 45 minutes long. Really, really good. And again, I'd recommend, even if you are not a wrestling fan, worth your time. Worth your time. Interesting. You'll learn some stuff, and it's. You won't say, Gino, I wasted 40 minutes. I promise you that. Okay, final segment of the show. We're going to read through the current, well, not current, I guess it's the final, the Kentucky Derby top 20. These are the 20 horses who will be in the Kentucky Derby starting gate as long as they stay healthy right now. Okay? So we'll give you like a little word or a phrase about each horse, and we'll maybe make a noise about each one too. so you can get an idea of who we really like the most. Okay, let's start from the bottom and go up. Number 20, Master Fencer. No. Spinoff. No. Gray Magician. No. 18, 19, 20. No, thank you for me. Country House. Okay. I think a price horse and a definite key under in the 2, 3, 4 spots. I don't know if he's good enough to win, but I do think with the right timed ride he could, and he will be one of the price horses that I'm including. Some of my exotics. Win. Very bottom of the exotics, just under. Cutting humor, not for me. Tax, not a fan. Long range Toddy. You could talk me into some bottom side of exotics, or maybe one of the on the fringe type horses. War of Will. Okay. I'm going to give War of Will a bounce back shot. If War of Will wins his most recent race, he's one of the betting favorites in the Kentucky Derby. I don't think he is the betting favorite, but he's probably like the third or fourth choice. And I think he's going to drop quite a bit because of that lackluster effort. But he won't be my number one horse, but he will be a horse in some exotics, and I'll use on the win end in a few spots. And okay. Improbable. Dun-dun-dun. If the price is right, that's what I'm thinking, right? Little Bob Barker, little Drew Carey. If the price is right, maybe. But I like others more than Improbable. High Cal. No. Code of Honor. Maybe. This is one that I'm really still in the middle on. No real strong opinion either way on Code of Honor. Game Winner. Pretty good. Yes, please. Anything over 6-1, Game Winner. Come on, yeah! Yeah, I like Game Winner a little bit. I think people are kind of jumping off of Game Winner because he hasn't won yet this year. He's battle tested. He's been in every big race from last year on. I like his running style. He's versatile. And I think he's going to be there. So I'm not concerned that he was a little short to a couple other good horses this year. I like him a lot. I really do. And I think if he's the horse that gets forgotten about on the windows a little bit and he's starting to float up and he's over 6, maybe he's 8-1 or 10-1, then we're really gonna get involved with Game Winner. Maximum Security. No thank you. By my standards, I need to see more. I don't like the whole buyer thing, changing the buyer. I was just really disappointed in particular with the Louisiana Derby and some of the big stars didn't run their best races. So I think he kind of capitalized on a couple of horses who didn't show up. Roadster, sure. Right? Why not? What's wrong with Roadster? Plus K Parfait, no thank you. No parfait for me, por favor. Vacoma. Right? Nice running style. If he's over 12-1, you can make a case for him. But his action, right? When I say his running style, I mean he has tactical speed in that he doesn't have to be far out off of it, but he's not going to be on the lead. He's a horse you can kind of put in really in any position that you want. But that action, right? He's not the smoothest mover, and you watch him, those front, he's like he's swimming out there. He's like he's paddling. And I don't know, going a mile and a quarter, can you win with that type of action? Omaha Beach, who will likely vie for favoritism. I think because Mike Smith moved over to the Mandela and not the Baffert, Omaha Beach probably will be your favorite in the Derby. And he reminds me of Orb, not anything more than just, he is just peaking right now at the right time. And he has that middle move on a running style that has won the Derby the last couple years. Mike can move a little early on him. He can sit close. He has a little speed if he needs it. No real knocks on Omaha Beach. And then we have Tacitus. Maybe, right? I think he's the horse that I don't know where he's going to be. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he's only 6-1 or so, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was up around 15-1 or so. You could talk me into him. I think he'll probably end up around 10, maybe your fourth choice. But if he starts taking some money and game winner floats up, I think he might be the wise guy horse that takes some money, Tacitus, and game winner might float up. So, just a quick idea. Now remember, we're still 2 weeks out, so things will change. We'll watch some workouts. We'll hear how horses are doing. We'll see some post positions. We'll see how the track is that day. There's still some factors to come in. But right now, we know most of these horses, so that's kind of how I feel about most of them. I would love some of the horses from 21 through 30 to get in, though, right? Like Signal Man, Another Twist of Fate, Sueño, Bourbon War, Instagram, Mucho Gusto, Owendale. I'd be more likely to play those horses than probably 10 of the horses I just mentioned that are in the Derby. So it's kind of a weird year in that I think there are some horses who are pretty good 3-year-olds that aren't even going to get in. We should probably see a really good undercard at Churchill, and I think a good Preakness with a lot of these, the Bourbon War, Sueño, Instagram, Signal Man, Another Twist of Fates. Whoa, folks! That's going to do it for our first actual real That's What G Said podcast. Again, a big thank you to Joey Cleveland. Joey, our buddy with the theme song. Make sure to follow Joey online. Make sure to follow Joey on Twitter. And if you can, folks, please head to iTunes. Leave me a nice 5-star rating and review. If you can subscribe and then leave a rating and review, what ends up happening is it is information that I can use for future sponsors, and I can always do all of these shows for free. I never have to charge for anything. That's one goal. I don't want to charge for content. There's so much great content out there. I want to pump out free content all the time. So every time you like, you retweet, you share a post, you subscribe, you tell your friends about it, or you sign up for an account with iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher or Pandora, iHeartRadio, Acast. Anywhere you are, That's What G Said is available for your downloading and listening pleasures. Folks, thank you very much. And let's listen to the sounds of Joey Cleveland as we get out of here.